And they did a scan and they said, okay, look, you're positive for cancer. Driving up Dolores Street, and we hit Dolores and 25th, and there's all these palm trees, and I'm looking at the sky, and I just had this moment of like, holy shit, like I might not be here tomorrow. Like this might be the last time I'm looking at these palm trees.
Yeah. The students at Alpha School are in the top 1% across every single subject. Is that wild? That's crazy. And their take is that's the first AI-driven education system that they have designed, like kind of AI first, right?
Welcome to Almost Got It, where we cover as humanity races towards technological singularity, and we live through the fastest period of change in human history. We break down the week's top stories in AI, consciousness, transhumanism, and spirituality to make sense of just what the hell is going on. Topics this week will cover AI and education, curing cancer, and also job disruption. And you have with you Dylan, entrepreneur here in San Francisco, ex-MIT, ex-Google, ex-YC, a burner, Sri Lankan, cat father, good friend. Great to be here with you.
And Ben was also a computer scientist, entrepreneur with an exit to Google, the CEO of the famed Esalen Institute, and spent decades as a CEO coach, and also a father to a beautiful child. And please subscribe and let us know how you like the episode at the end, so that we can keep improving.
All right, let's jump in.
All right, Ben, good to have you here back in San Francisco.
Yeah. It's great to be here in your living room office.
My office, yeah.
It's just sort of how we started
a
long time ago.
Yeah. It's also good to do this, fun to do this in person. See how this goes. I like your hat, by the way. What does it say? Serious play mode on. I like it. That's great.
Yes. My girlfriend made this for me.
She made it.
Yes.
That's sick. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's very serious when you apply.
All right. The first story this week is something I'm super excited about. Where do I start? I'll tell you the reason why I thought about this story is because I was talking to a gentleman, the other night, and, we were talking about AI, and, he was worried about, the influence of AI dumbing people down, right? Like, he was imagining that, like now you don't have to even think. You can just like ask a question from ChatGPT and you just like the next generation is going to be so much less well equipped for life and so on. And that made me think of the story of the Alpha School, and something that I've been keenly interested for a long time. And then they just released some data that's really, really promising as well. So what is Alpha School to begin with? Alpha School is a pre-K to elementary, I think, or maybe through high school, school that started in Austin, Texas, and now they're expanding nationwide. And their take is that's the first AI-driven education system that they have designed, like kind of AI first, right? And so we all pretty much know from all the research out there, like sitting in a classroom is like pretty much the worst way to learn. The best way to learn ideally is that you're kind of learning through your interest, and then the task keeps becoming more challenging over time. This is exactly what Alpha School does, uses AI to do. And the cool thing is the teachers in Alpha Schools act as coaches or guides as opposed to content experts. And the child or the student is learning with AI at all times. And kids only study for 2 hours a day. Can you imagine that? Like in 2 hours a day, they learn everything that they need to learn because they're learning at least 2 times faster, with this methodology.
Yeah. Well, couple reactions to this. So one is, I was staying with a close friend recently who runs a major Silicon Valley tech company, and we were ordering lunch. I was like, hey, I'll get lunch from this local place. And instead of him looking at the menu, right, he went to Claude and is like, hey, what should I get from this restaurant? And then it generated a response. And I my first thought was, holy shit, like, is this our future, that we sort of let go of our autonomy because we just believe that AI is going to know better?
I let go of my autonomy the moment Yelp came out. What are you talking about? I just ordered the top thing on Yelp. But they're that for like 10 years, man.
Which is sort of wrong, because when you and I go to a restaurant, I like lose you into the phone.
A few 2 minutes to like figure out what the top thing on Yelp is.
Exactly. AI might be an environment.
Yeah, that's it.
And it's not 2 minutes. Like, it feels like 2 minutes for you.
But yeah, so what's you thought?
Well, okay, so for one thing, there is this ability for us to think for ourselves and have autonomy and all of that.
Sure.
To me, I mean, it's arguable. Maybe he was playing with AI and like would one day go back to making the decisions for himself. But at the same time, it intuitively feels like there's a loss of something. Like who really cares? Like there's a certain joy of just like looking at a menu and like, that sounds delicious, and you order it, and there's a little bit of a roll of the dice, and maybe it'll be great, maybe it won't.
Now you have the option.
Right. Now you have the option. Now the counterpoint to that is that it's like freeing up cycles in your mind to think about other things. Sure. It's like, oh, I just choose what type of cuisine I want. The thing will order what I'm going to want, because it's going to be great at predicting what I'm going to be hungry for in an hour, and it does that. But putting that aside, and my concerns about it potentially dumbing us down, to me, this is one of the things that's so inspiring. And we have been looking at things like this for a long time. I think one great example of this is actually your former boss and mentor, Max Ventilla, right? With All School.
Yeah.
And famously, I think they raised $200 million.
Yeah.
And did a huge push on exactly this, with this format,
right?
AI-driven approach with some of the best minds out of Google. And I remember some of the user experience researchers that I worked with at Google peeled off to work there. I mean, it was amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah. For the listener who don't know the backstory, Max Ventilla is, we used to be my boss my manager at Google, when I was a product manager at Google. And he left to start an AI first company, but this was back in, I want to say 2014, 2015. This was pre-deep learning, but machine learning was still taking off. And some of the top machine learning experts at Google left with him as well, because it was such an inspiring project. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. They had to shut down the project. They tried really hard. It was just a little bit too early. They didn't have the deep learning stuff, able to generate content the way it is able to do today.
Right. And to me, I think that's the thing that's so extraordinary, is that it's just a handful of years later, at the pace of acceleration.
Absolutely.
Has enabled this. And personally, I'm really excited about this.
Yeah.
Right. Because I can't imagine that there's anyone that we know that hasn't had the experience of feeling like hours of just being wasted in the school, not actually learning in an efficient way. And if you think about why is it that way?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the structure of a school, it's a technology and a process, right? The technology was a blackboard with a chalk, with a teacher in a seminar format, which hundreds of years ago was the most efficient way to disseminate knowledge at scale.
Well, yes, and particularly the British education system was particularly designed to create cookie cutter bureaucrats, right? Because in a world where real-time communication didn't exist, how do you build an empire, right? Like, how do you control, territories across the planet from like a centralized organization? The way you do that is by creating bureaucrats that basically act very, very similar to each other, right? So they designed that system for that purpose.
Is that true?
It is.
So is there evidence of that being done, that they designed the educational system?
Well, they wanted to, the evidence as in they standardized everything. It was less oriented towards creativity and exploration. It was more oriented towards like churning out like a specific set of people who could repeatedly do a specific set of things, in a specific way. And this was important. I'm not criticizing this at all, but this was the way it was built for a purpose.
Yeah.
Right. And, but we don't have to do that anymore, which is fantastic.
Well, and the thing that I think is so exciting about this is the personalization, not just, sort of leveling and meeting the student where they are. Of this is where they are in reading, this is where they are in math, this is where they are in science, but the potential to adapt the style. Absolutely. Learning. Yeah. Instantly to meet students' interest. Yeah. Right. So, there's a style of learning that my mother's, or my son's mother, used to teach when she was a teacher, called Zoom learning. And the idea would be that you take a topic that the kid actually cares about, whether it's, creating a magazine about something, and then you can teach them all the other things. Here's the math behind stuff. Here's, the app you organize the project. Here's how to do the research. Here's how to build relationships. So you can learn a lot of different things, but you're focused on the kid's passion. And so the potential to do that here is pretty extraordinary.
Absolutely. And this is where, and the data speaks for itself. And again, by the way, the antidote to this is a big passion of mine, like, the skepticism and cynicism. The antidote to skepticism is always data, right? And yes, people often think that, AI is going to dumb us down, but so let's see what Alpha School students are doing, right? It turns out the students at Alpha School are in the top 1% across every single subject. Is that wild? That's crazy.
So I did see, as we were researching this, a little asterisk that this is coming from the founder.
It doesn't matter, right? I'm just trusting the pick person.
Yeah. Well, let's say it does matter, Hill, but it's not 1%. But let's say it's 5%.
Yeah.
Even if it was top 10%, if you could essentially turn on a school and with a better technology, move all the kids into the 90th percentile, that's pretty freaking extraordinary. And to do that with and unpack how much time they're actually spent learning, what does a day look like?
Yeah, so the kids are learning 2.5 times faster than the average American student, and they're just learning 2 hours a day, doing the learning process, and the rest of the day is spent creative work, exploring, building projects, and stuff like that. There was this story about Ellie Christine, I think, a junior at Alpha School, where she was describing what her day is like, and that her schedule is freed up substantially to follow passion projects. So what she's doing with her free time, she's developing a safe AI dating coach aimed at teenagers, of course. Or what else would a teenager be? Maybe she was the next Zuckerberg. Something that would be possible. And I saw another parent on Twitter talking about how their 5-6-year-old is building a company, right? And this is incredible to get this level of real world experience at that young age. I'm curious,
you need a link to this 6-year-old building a company, because my son then had 2 good ideas now. I'm like, yeah, you should go productize.
I can't wait to send my children to something like this. And especially thinking back to the way my education panned out. I mean, I was lucky to go to some of the best schools, as in Sri Lanka and then at MIT. But at the same time, I hated learning in the sense that I was always very good at it, but I was never enjoying it. Almost never, because it was this rote memorization, and it was just not what I was interested in the moment, and it was very kind of stick driven as opposed to carrot driven. It was just the worst thing. And after graduating from college, I keep thinking back, how incredible would it be if I could go back to college and just like study what I would have just like loved to learn.
Right.
And our children hopefully are going to have a dramatically different experience.
Yeah. I mean, I think I shared a little bit about this the other week that I turned on AI with a sort of like a child appropriate prompt and just gave it to my son and observed what happened. And he would just talk to it like a human, right? And he'll just like make a statement like, I love rockets. Right. And then it would respond like, yeah, rockets are awesome. And he's like, well, are rockets or airplanes faster? And then it responds.
Yeah.
Right. And then he's like, well, how does a airplane engine work? Yeah. And then it responds. And then he's like deep in this conversation and his curiosity is fueled. Right. And there's no one getting upset that he's not following the curriculum that's described, right? He's following his curiosity and he's learning, and like the rate of acceleration of learning is massive. Right. And so I could see if those types of prompts and experiences are developed, and then you add in the ability for video and audio and interactive games or other experiences to illustrate the point, I mean, it could be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is also the amazing thing here is that it's very low cost to roll out, right? Like, traditionally, the bottleneck for building great schools have been, how do you find great teachers? And teachers need to be content subject matter experts in like a wide variety of things, like really hard to do. Yeah. Whereas now, AI takes care of that, and then the teacher can just focus on the human connection and the coaching and the guidance and emotional support and all that stuff. And it's so much more scalable, not just in the United States, but across the world. And I hope for a future where this just, is the beginning of like almost like a renaissance in humans that are just like curious and passionate and loves knowledge and so on. That is just incredible.
Well, it's interesting you say that about the Renaissance, because I actually want to tie it to something that we were going to talk about later, but I think I want to bring it in right now, and because it's related, which is there was this announcement by a company called Lexi, right, that was able to do real-time language translation, both text to speech and speech to text, and just do it absolutely accurately. I think like 99.5% accurate, right? In real time. And so if you think about this is enormous disruption. I was looking at the data, and it says language services as a whole, $76 billion market, according to some quotes. Speech to text, 3.8 billion, text to speech, 4 billion. And so, of course, there's all these services now that are immediately disrupted by this. And this is probably just going to become ubiquitous. Right. But I was even thinking about specifically, there's a segment that is real-time speech to speech, right? So if you think about the United Nations, everyone's got their little headphones on while there's a speech being given. Behind that, there's a whole bunch of people doing translation, and like their jobs are gone. Yeah. Like that shit is just over. Yeah. Right. And that's not billions and billions. I think that's like a $620 million market, but that's probably many, many tens of thousands of people that are instantly out of jobs. And so I think one of the challenges here is this mass disruption to people's livelihoods. There's a lot of people that thrive in an environment with stability of like, oh, I've had my job for 10 or 20 years. And this is just such a clear cut example of like night and day, that whole industry is gone. Yeah. And that's going to start to repeat for all of these different parts of humanity where AI can do it 1,000 times cheaper, better, more reliable, all of that. And so there's this whole like dystopian fear that isn't undeserved of like what's going to happen. Yeah, this segment of humanity, and yet there's on the other side the opportunity to retrain, to learn new things, to focus on this renaissance. I'm curious what your thoughts are about this option and what are the possibilities or what can.
I mean, it's certainly going to be a jarring change, but when you were talking about that, what came to my mind is that just consider the fact that the United Nations, right? We bring a bunch of people, top diplomats from every single country in the world, probably native languages, 200 something, and then they're put in a room, and the point of them being there is to work together to build a better future. But what's getting in the way of them working together? They can't fucking communicate, right? They don't fucking understand each other. They need a fucking translator out there who's doing real-time translation. And if that translator is gone, and as a result, they can all get in a room and like fucking figure shit out. Imagine the upside of that, right?
Right. I mean, this is my other theory is that we need English to English AI translation.
Yeah, just perfect.
Because like you've got any two humans in the room, the dog, and they can't work together. But if I have an AI that knows me well and you have one that knows you well, we could just put them together. Them figures.
That's true.
And then you and I all go get a beer.
But yeah, so this is like, I mean, yes, there's job loss, but then the productivity gains at the same time, and what, those humans can accomplish is tremendous. And the other example that came to my mind, Ben, is that when you're talking about this story, I am actually thinking about, so we're going to have kids probably soon, and, both myself and my wife have run companies and we're quite busy and want to get help, right? Yeah. And we're thinking about hiring a nanny. And I'm, for multiple reasons, I think I'm going to go with the Chinese nanny because there's a more Asian nanny network.
You're going to go with an AI.
AI nanny is not available.
You're going to go with a Tesla robot.
Yeah. Eventually.
With the plush of screen finish.
But my actual real plan is to, get Meta glasses for myself and the nanny. And this thing translates in real time and we can communicate. Now that's a job created because of translation, right?
Well, you didn't have a nanny anyway.
I would have had a nanny. Well, maybe not. I mean, maybe this nanny is like, is cheaper or something like that, right? And I probably would have had a nanny anyway because I can afford one, but like someone who can, can't afford a US based nanny that now can use a Chinese nanny. And so to me, the literally needing translation, what is that like? Just the fact that we need translators, yes, it's a job, but it's also like literal friction in the system, right? Like if that friction is removed, I think we will create far more jobs than we get rid of them. Now that doesn't negate the point that there will still be real humans who've been translators their whole life, and now they have to go do something else, and that is going to be challenging. And there's a lot to unpack there, and at some point, as much as I myself believe in capitalism and free markets and so on, we will have to move away from that system to provide some level of protection to people who cannot potentially adopt in this near future, right? Because ultimately it's not really their fault. Maybe they're just like, they're too old to learn new ways of doing things and whatnot. But then, right, like to take care of those people, what you need is more resources and capital. And if AI driven productivity gains lead to massive amounts of excess, resources and capital, then we can make that available to those people.
Yeah. Well, so that leads into these questions about how do you do that? Like, is universal basic income a way to do this? I remember being part of some early conversations, maybe 9 years ago, around this. And one of my mentors, I think, said it really, really well, which is that there in the United States, where our identity as individuals is often very tied to deriving meaning from our work, that we're going to have this crisis of meaning that arises, right? If you're no longer able to be employed in the thing that you've done for 10 years or 20 years, if you're not providing for your family in the way that you could have, how do you have a sense of identity when that goes away? And so one of the things I've theorized about is that certain cultures will actually adapt to this change more readily. Like, for example, French cultures or Latin cultures that are much more centered around family and derive more meaning there. I think they might actually receive this change much more readily, right? I mean, I don't want to stereotype, but like you go to, you walk around France and a lot of the bars in the middle there are full of people that are collecting unemployment. It's just sort of a thing that you do.
When you're in between, they're having a great time. Well, for all you know, they're just pontificating about philosophy, right?
But anyway, I'm coming at this because to me, in thinking this through, the opportunity is a renaissance. There's an unbounded amount of creative expression that can come out of every individual.
Sure.
Right. And as we free up resources from needing to do normal labor and menial tasks, that is the natural output if you don't veer off into distraction and addiction.
Yeah. I mean, there's always, AI is one of those event horizons. It's just like really hard to tell, what's on the other side. But, I think when you look at, like, historically, humans have figured out ways to solve these types of problems. Like, there was Renaissance type situations have happened before, right? In ancient Rome and Greece, there were upper class societies that basically were post scarcity, right? And of course, they still got diseases and died and so on. But day to day life, everything was taken care of. They had an army of slaves or whatever. And they went on to,
You'll have your army of robot slaves,
robot nannies. And they went on to produce some, great literature and art and so on. And, maybe that will happen. I don't know. But it's exciting.
You're going to hear from first, Dylan wants his AI slaves.
What to do with conscious AI is going to be a big debate.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Covered last episode.
Yes. But rounding this off, Alpha School is, I think, one of the most, like, people often actually ask, there's all this hype about AI, but how is it actually being used, right? Like, here you go, right? Here's like a concrete example of AI positively changing, the human condition, like, in a measurable way, in a dramatic way, and in a way that just like, you can't wait to get this to your children. So that's really exciting.
Yeah. Actually, there's one other thing that I want to say around this. It's the idea that I've hoped someone would pick up for a super long time. So to me, I always thought about it, like when I was in high school physics, and I'm trying to learn physics, and I'm looking at symbols on a page, right? Like if you think about it, the universe, which is a 3D thing that we live in, right? We have to translate down into these mathematical symbols and put it on a page, and we draw lines. So it's a representation of this crazy thing that's happening in 3 dimensions. And there are things that our minds are capable of doing with a high degree of accuracy, right? That you take a ball and a pitcher can throw a ball, whatever it is, 60 feet to the plate and hit the strike zone. And it's not just a straight shot. It goes in a curve and there's a spin, all this shit. And they're able to do that. The amount of computation that occurs to do that is actually impressive. It's extremely hard to get a robot to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. And the robots are catching up. Yeah, that's extremely hard with the amount of math compared to the math that we do when we work with symbols. And that's because it uses two entirely different areas of the brain, right? The visual cortex and the motor cortex have enormous processing power. But the area of the brain that's responsible for handling doing math is this tiny freaking part. It's called like area 42 or something. And so I've always thought if you could redesign how you even work with stuff, like to me, I question, are we even going to need to look at the math pretty soon at all? Or are we going to just work with physics in three-dimensional experiences, right? Could we literally just get rid of needing to translate into the shitty, slow, input, output interpretation that we have to do and use the much larger part of the brain by interacting with the physics of the universe directly or climbing inside of a new jet motor that you're creating and just.
Yeah. I mean, this very simple, analogy here is really like, YouTube has become an incredible educational resource because you could just like visualize things much better than on a book. And so essentially an extension of that and something, and can it not be just static, but adapt to your own needs and interests in real time? Like, sky is the limit. It's super exciting.
Yeah. Well, and to me, I wonder if it unlocks a possibility of more like Stephen Hawking's. Like I should look at these guys. A lot of what they do is they're credible at visualizing things, but they can also do the math. And the two of those combined was really hard. Yeah. I think about my dad who has a credible visual spatial capability and thinks about physics all day long, but has dyslexia. And so he can't do the math. Right. But if he could work in a 3D world with AI that can handle the math, it's entirely possible that he could come up with major breakthroughs in physics because the limitation goes away. So I even think there's possibilities here that we end up with more geniuses on our hands.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that'd be really cool if we, it's the next generation is just like, way smarter because of AI. That's the future that I'd definitely like to see, obviously.
Yeah. All right. What are we talking about next here?
We have another exciting story about, cure for cancer. Apparently it's here at last. Are you excited? But as a Jew, you might, not like how they have cured cancer. But, so it turns out this Chinese researchers, this is a really major breakthrough. It's really exciting. What they have done is that they used a virus to insert, pig protein into cancer cells. And what happened was that as a result, the immune system, recognized, saw that these cancer cells as not part of, the human body and that person's body, and then started rejecting it. And similarly how, the organ transplant patients' organs are rejected by the immune system. And the results are dramatic. They have had 90% effectiveness in clinical trials across multiple cancers, liver, ovarian cancer, cervical and lung cancers, where one cervical cancer patient has been fully cured clinically. Just incredible.
Well, and then I don't know if you read it, but in Jews, it's actually 99%.
Effect, yeah. Because of our natural immunity to pork.
I see. You guys see? So, it's not kosher, but it's cure for cancer.
I think this presents a major dilemma.
Do you die and go to heaven, or do you stay alive and maybe go to the house.
And we Jews don't believe in heaven now anyways. I don't actually know what happened to you if you eat pork as a Jew, but I'm going to eat a lot of pork.
Yeah.
I don't know what the consequences are.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, cancer is one of the major killers, and yeah, we've both known people who passed from cancer, and it's really exciting to see. We like cure for cancer it's a really huge deal, and this is being attacked through multiple angles, and we might be living in a future where these type of diseases are not life-threatening anymore.
Yeah, I mean, first, it is personally exciting for me as a cancer survivor.
Yeah.
And we do talk about that a little bit more in a bit, but also this isn't the first even style of cancer cure. I've been hearing about mRNA ones. Yes, a lot of the number of people, I should say, that I know that are deep in the synthetic biology space believe that cancer, it's going to take a while to roll it out, but the cures will probably, for all cancer, will probably be developed by the end of this year. Wow. Like that is a crazy suggestion.
Yeah.
And I heard this from someone who I view as incredibly cautious in the types of statements they make. And to just go, yeah, like virtual certainty that we're going to be that close.
Wow.
Now, maybe it takes another 10 years for us to test everything in safety and all this sort of stuff, but it's just an incredible feat to imagine that in a decade,
yeah,
we may no longer worry about cancer or other diseases.
And to really bring more perspective into this, right? Like, you just read about, some of cancer, whatever, and then maybe these cures are coming, but there's like kind of this news, the news feels somewhat detached, right? Like from your everyday experience. So I was curious if you could tell the story about, I know you went through cancer when you were younger, and what was it like? It's not so much the disease, but like the just finding out you have a condition like this, and the sort of the finality that brings to life, or maybe the uncertainty, and what's the what did you go through, and how was it internally for you?
Yeah, well, the way it unfolded for me was that I was 19. I was in school at UCSD in San Diego for computer science, and I got sick over the winter holiday. And you get sick, your lymph nodes and your throat sort of swell up. And then when I got back to school, I got better. And then this one lymph node over here just didn't go away.
Yeah.
Right. And then it just sort of like kept getting bigger.
Yeah.
And that was sort of weird to the point that you notice, right? Like, no, you never really think about your lymph nodes, but I was like, I can see this in the mirror, and that is fucking weird. Right. And so I went into the school there, and they took a look at it, and we had Thornton, which Thornton Hospital is one of the top cancer research hospitals in the world. And they did a needle biopsy, and the results came back inconclusive. And then it, took many, many months. And then I turned 20 and went home. And so I did an up home to San Francisco. I did a second needle biopsy that also was inconclusive, and CPMC, also the top hospital, and then a third one. And then they actually opened me up, removed 2 lymph nodes. Those tests were inconclusive. And so you can imagine, as the months moved past, I grew pretty worried about this, and my parents were very worried as well. And then when CPMC and then USF both evaluated and couldn't figure it out. They sent it to Stanford to the head of oncology there, Sandra Harney, and she identified that it was cancer. And so it'd be interesting to talk to my parents, but I can imagine now, having my 5-year-old son, that they were flipping out. And my response to this was to, just shut down. Right? I hadn't been taught any EQ stuff, or it's okay to feel your feelings. And so I was 20 and I was a man and I was going to tough it out. And so when they diagnosed me with cancer, I was like, hit me with the chemo. Let's start tomorrow. And we're like, holy shit, don't you want time to figure it out, and think it over? I'm like, no, let's do it. Science is going to cure me. Like, let's go. And, so somehow I was able to give a sperm donation, which they had me do because I might have gone on the sterile. And so I took my first dose of chemo and I did, 6 cycles, which is, 6 months, 12 injections of chemotherapy. And I think most people don't know what chemotherapy is, but it's literally chemical therapy. It runs in different ways of taking, and sometimes it's oral, whatever. Mine was injected into my veins. And what they're trying to do is cancer is this evolutionary biology that's spun out of control, right? And it's mutated for healthy cells, but it can continue to mutate. Yeah. And so, the doctor, the oncologist, is basically playing this game of chess where they have to predict what are the next few mutation moves of cancer. Right. And if they get it right, you live. And if they get it wrong, it mutates into a path where they don't have a treatment to that type of cancer, and you die. Right. And so, they diagnosed me with, stage 3 lymphoma, with a particular type called nodular lymphocyte predominant Hodgkin's disease, which is a fancy word for no one fucking gets it at 20. Yeah. So I was this weird anomaly that the head of oncology wanted. And so I went through that and I lost my hair. I had to drop out of school because I didn't have the energy to walk. Like I would drive to class, and sometimes by the time I walked to the front door of the class, I was too exhausted. I just have to drive home. And, so it had a huge impact.
What do you feel like? Cause obviously it's cancer, right? And it might be the end. And like, did you worry about that? Yeah.
Good question. So when I went through the chemo, I wasn't consciously worried about it. My view was science is going to save me. I'm at the top university. We have the top doctor who runs oncology at Stanford. It will save me. And they gave me all the different options, and they were like, we're going to give you the hardest hit we can. It's this cocktail of these 4 medicines, which, by the way, chemo fucking sucks, right? So they were injecting this into my veins and it was scarring my veins. They would literally light up red. And then after a while, they couldn't get the needle into the veins. So this has to put in a permanent or a temporary, but 6-month, pick. Yeah. And so I had this tube sticking out that I would have to wrap up and not get wet. And they would inject that in, and then, it scarred my lungs. Yeah. So the permanent scarring in my lungs from that, and which this reduces my ability to get oxygen effectively. But, what happened is I went through it. Then they retested me, and I was negative. And they're like, okay, you're in remission. Okay. And then 6 months later, I'd been working, rebuilt my body and everything, got back. And they did a scan and they said, okay, look, you're positive, for cancer. And I remember driving up Dolores Street, and we had Dolores and 25th, and there's all these palm trees, and I'm looking at the sky, and I just had this moment of like, holy shit, like I might not be here tomorrow. Like this might be the last time I'm looking at these palm trees.
Yeah.
And I just crumbled. Right. And I had no idea what my parents were going through, trying to like hold it together and be a support to me and all of that. So that changed my life. That moment of I might not be here tomorrow because up until that moment, I had been this incredibly shy kid. And so that lit this insane fire under me. And I went through, so we tested, it sent positive. They did a biopsy on me after the test. And they said, okay, it's positive, but it's indolent, meaning it's slow growing. Yeah. And so we're just going to monitor, but we're not going to treat you. So from that moment forward, my life story was I am living with active cancer. I mean, like there's something that's growing slowly that may evolve, and then suddenly it's going to try to kill me. And so every time I would have a fear come up, like, hey, I want to go talk to a pretty girl, or I want to quit my job and start a company, right? And then the fear would go like, oh no, you can't do that. You might be rejected, or it might not work out, or whatever. Like there'd be this voice that would go, you might not be here tomorrow. Yeah. And so then I would act. And so it was like this double shot of fear. And fear to stop me, and the fear that I would even stab that chance. And so that's what drove me to create. That's what drove me to develop and grow myself and start a company with you. Right. So it had this huge impact.
Isn't this is so interesting how humans react to adversity and pain, right? Like it is, through suffering, you just like build yourself into something that, is stronger sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan of seeing that our pain becomes our purpose, right? Our process of overcoming it. And I look at my cancer as the gift I would never want to give to someone else. Right. And I mean, it fucked me up. Yeah. Like, let's be clear. Like, it fucked me up. Right? Like, I couldn't shit. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I was probably fucking crazy if someone had actually diagnosed me. And it took me years to unwind all of that and come to terms and then release myself, be driven by that fear. Yeah. But there's an interesting point here that comes back to why all this stuff is so important, aside from just saving people. After a decade of this and being tested and for cancer, I was just like, fuck it. I'm unwilling to live with cancer anymore. I don't want that to be part of my story. There's all this new medicines. There's, reishi mushrooms of showing efficacy of helping get rid of it. I said, all right, I want to go in. I want to get tested. And I hadn't been in for years because all they would do is palpate my lymph nodes and then go, you're fine. And they had part of the story is that when they would scan me, they would do this thing called a PET CT scan, which was this new technology that had just come out when I was going in. And CT would basically provide a topological map of the body. Kind of PET scan would load stuff up sort of like a heat sensor. So you could see on the map where the lymph nodes were. And after several years of this, they basically said, turns out that this radioactive sugar that we've been injecting in you that we told you wasn't cancer causing because it was small doses, turns out that causes cancer.
Oh my God.
So we're not going to do that anymore.
So the cure was making you sicker.
Making you sicker. So they stopped doing that. And I'm like, well, how are we going to know that this cancer, if it shifts out of indolent? And they said, well, you're going to start to have symptoms. I'm like, okay, so some lymph nodes can be so big it pushes on their liver. And I start having weird ass symptoms. Like basically, like this sucks. So I didn't go in for like 6 years. And finally, when I had this fuck it moment, I went in and my plan was I'm going to demand that they give me the radioactive sugar and let's get an updated baseline. And then I'm going to try all this shit and try to cure it. And I come in and they don't even do labs on me. And the head of oncology sits me down and says, hey, we looked at all your numbers and we've decided that you don't have cancer.
Yeah. Wow.
I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, you showed me on a chart and all this sort of stuff. And she's like, yeah, it turns out that PET CT scanner, it has a 40% false positive rate.
That's it. Wow.
So we're going to rescan you with a regular CT, but it's been so many years that we looked at your data and that you're fine. And so we did the scan, and it turns out I don't have cancer, and I hadn't had cancer in 12 years. But to me, like, that shaped me and that fucked up my life.
Yeah.
In a big way. Like, if you think about you're about to have kids, imagine having a conversation with your partner.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, so I have cancer and I don't know how long I'm going to be around you and have kids with me.
Yeah.
That's a big fucking deal.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, being able to cure cancer with accuracy, or like the other story we're going to talk about is that this company that can identify with precision and do much more accurate diagnoses with AI. Like, these are life-changing things that are happening here that can save people from my experience and sort of the blast radius of impact that it has.
Yeah.
So it's not just me, right? It's like what years came off my mom and dad's life from supporting me through this.
Yeah.
The impact of my, former partners. So considering a life in some cancer. So.
Yeah. No. Wow. That's incredible. It's interesting. It seemed like when you finally discovered that you didn't have cancer, I'm sure there was joy, but then there was also like, you seemed like you were pissed off because, like, maybe what if you knew that this like 12 years ago as opposed to now, right?
Yeah. I mean, well, I call it the Three Stooges effect of emotion, right? It's like when every emotion tries to go out the drawer at the same time and it all just gets stuck.
Yeah.
Cause I remember get the news and I had gone down there with my mother.
Yeah.
Because every time you talk with these, you want science to be, or your medicine to be a science, but it's not, right? And every time we meet with these doctors, I would hear one thing. My mom would hear something totally different. So be fucking confused. And so she was there, the moral support. I hear this stuff and we get the news and I'm in shock, and we're walking out and we get in the car and I get in the driver's seat and we're driving out, and I'm laughing and I'm crying and I'm shaking. And I remember my mom looks over at me and I look at her and she goes, I think you better let me try this. So we do a little fire drill and switch at the stoplight. Cause it was just so cataclysmic for me.
Yeah.
And also, in addition to, like, I was upset about what had happened. Yeah. Elated that I didn't have cancer and had this sense of freedom. But at the same time, I was petrified because of that story, the story that you might not be here tomorrow, Ben.
Yeah.
Had driven my success.
Interesting.
12 years. And I was terrified that if I didn't have that fear, that I wouldn't go on to do anything
Crazy.
meaningful. Yeah. So there's your full mind fuck.
Yeah, that is wow. That is pretty wild. Yeah. Wow. That's it's so interesting. Yeah. It's almost like, and thank you for sharing that story. What a beautiful painful human story. And also, like, science did cure you ultimately, right? And it's just,
I literally would not be here if not for that.
And then, like, the angle around, like, just the right amount of suffering bring you kind of meaning, maybe. It's something interesting to think about, right? So it's just like, there's gotta be, cause something I always think about that I cannot wrap my head around, honestly, my mind around, honestly, is that the fact that childhood mortality rate used to be 50% just about 100 years ago, right? Now, what does this mean? Half the people, like half humans who were born, would die. Now, how many people do I know with a dead sibling or a dead child? Zero. Not one.
Yeah.
Right? 100, 200 years ago, like, this was the norm. Like, you had half your brothers and sisters dead. And like, how did mothers deal with this? Like, I read, you both read, Team of Rivals and Lincoln biography. Lincoln's, I remember, I think, he lost a child and went into depression. And I think his wife was depressed for the rest of her life. And it's just like the most incredible thing. And this used to happen to half the people that your kids that you give birth to.
Yeah. I mean, while the mortality rate for humanity still stands at 100%, but
at least not child,
But not child.
yeah. So, and it is quite remarkable to me that the strides we've made, the distance we've come as a species, purely through technological innovation.
yeah.
And the benefits, the fruits of it touch us every single day in such profound ways. The amount of suffering that's been eliminated is like tremendous. Right. And yet, most of the world are afraid of technology, and yet most of the world fears technology.
Yeah.
And it's that itself is quite the dilemma.
Well, maybe AI will teach the world about how to do probabilities. They won't be as afraid.
That's it's true. I mean, I suppose people evolve to be fearful of like what's around the corner behind the bush, as opposed to be all optimistic about like, hey, maybe there's a hot girl behind the bush. Yes, it's lighting a sandwich with tiger, not a hot chick waiting to hook up with you. And then you liked it without him. Oh shit. Yeah, that's
Well, but we are evolved for that. I mean, that's why insurance exists.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like the only reason there really is insurance and that it's profitable is because the human brain can't weight risks effectively.
yeah.
And so they're willing to pay for things that are extremely improbable.
Right.
Right. Or to event things that are extremely improbable.
Yeah. I mean, just like this road of reducing suffering but then there is an interesting question there, like, is there a sweet spot for suffering, you think? Because if half your kids are dying, right, like that's not where you want to be. There's no inspiration there. You're not going to be like, oh, fuck, like, I'm going to have another kid who's going to, it's like, whatever. I don't know. Like, maybe some people still derive inspiration from that, but that's just like, that's the one extreme. But then is there a world where everything's just like handed to you and there's like, there's like not enough suffering to create meaning? And that is, that is an interesting question.
Well, okay. So embedded into that is you're implying that suffering creates meaning, which I would challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you take, for example, some of the sincere conversations we've had, they felt very meaningful to me. And well, I guess I was suffering if I'm honest.
That point, I know it's tough. Yeah.
No, but jesting aside, like there are extremely meaningful moments that don't involve suffering. To me, there's something different, which is there challenge or discomfort or pain, and can there be value to that? And I believe there is.
So are we just kind of as a difference of like how we name things? I mean, discomfort.
Yeah, maybe. So, well, I think it's actually important to unpack that, right? Sometimes people say suffering, and like, if you think about working out and doing reps, you could call that suffering. And I would actually, it's helpful, at least in my mind, to organize it as suffering, like the loss of a loved one or heartbreak or things like that. And my belief is that humanity will auto-generate suffering for itself, no matter how much AI is around.
Oh, yes, and there's always this probably, I mean, arguably a lot less suffering, right? Just toiling away in the field all day long as you used to do your entire life. Like, that's a lot of suffering, even if no one dies.
Well, it's unclear, right? Like that's why I think the distinction between pain and suffering is important, right? So like you're toiling in the fields, but are you suffering? Maybe you're enjoying your experience of being in nature. I mean,
why is it that no one picks that if they could?
I mean, my old roommate Kent used to be a 3D animator, and now he's got a farm in Texas. So
he's got a farm in Texas where he uses modern technology to, you know, farm really cool things, and just like, I don't know, like it's like,
I don't know how modern it is. It's people love that permaculture. My mom tends a garden.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's just definitely I can do this for joy, but given the option, there are no farmers who continue to choose farming. No farmers want their children to continue to farm.
I just don't think that's true.
That's 100% true in third world countries. Like it might not be the case in the United States if you're like a, you know, rich farmer with like large farmland that you really kids should.
Well, but to me, this is an example of cultural things, right? So it used to be that when everyone was skinny and on the field wasn't working super hard, that being fat was attractive because it meant wealth.
Sure.
Right. And then now, having the luxury of being fit and thin.
Yeah.
Right. That signals wealth and wealth. Right. Or it used to be that being, very white and white skin signaled, wealth and was very attractive, and now being tan. So like, to me, those things change. And so if you look at our world, like your wife loves gardening.
Yeah.
As a
hobby, not because she has to, which she would.
Not she has to. Yeah, exactly. But I think like people will want to be able to make those choices.
Oh yeah. People will absolutely make those choices.
Yes. Yeah. But to me, there's an infinite amount of interpersonal suffering that people generate, and the mind, doesn't have a sense of scale. So I don't think you can necessarily right size stuff. Like if you've never lost a family member, losing, the end of a relationship might generate the same amount of suffering inside or in that human as the next human actually losing the sibling. It's just not, there shows no way to measure these things. And so to me, this is why it all leads back into meditation practice, because the loss, whatever form it takes, can generate suffering or discomfort, or in working out or getting your body fit can generate suffering. And then, but it's how you hold it in your mind, whether you suffer or whether it's just emotion.
Yeah. I mean, I think ultimately there is some farmer out there, some fisherman, some, I don't know, road worker that just like is in flow and doing their thing and enjoying what they're doing. But I would bet 99% of them are just like hating their life in the sense that like, it's way too painful.
I don't know. I would get out there. I think you need to do some field research. And I think
there is field research on this. There's like, it's like, there's, like, I don't know.
Well, I mean, but to me, I would separate things out, right? Like there's the farmer in America, which right now, they're being squeezed and they're struggling to make a living.
Yeah.
Right. And to me, the stress comes from that experience, not having stability in your life around earning a living and risks of crop failure and things like that, and keeping it right at that threshold that all the companies.
Well, which is exactly my point. I'm not
That's separate from the action.
but that was exactly the reality, like for most of human history, right? Like you lived in absolute scarcity and you were doing this very hard labor because you had to, because you were forced to, because you would die otherwise. And that is very different from your friend Kent, who went to become a farmer because, that's what he loved, or my wife who does gardening because that's what he loved. She just loves doing that as a hobby. So, yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's like examples of cultures I've seen where people haven't had the massive impact of Western culture. There seems to be a lot of joy. I mean,
The knowledge is immeasurably incorrect. Like GDP is very highly correlated to happiness across every single country.
well, then why are we having a mental health crisis in the United States?
That's a great question. And I think it's important to put these things into like numbers and actually measure. The US, yes, like there's fentanyl crisis and all these things happening right now. But at the same time, if you zoom out, like there's like zero doubt that like GDP is tied to like measured happiness.
Man, I don't know. I look at nearly everyone around us is just so stressed out and riddled with anxiety. And we've got a few friends that have made it, or they've done the deep work. Right, because I got plenty of friends that have made it that have not done the work, and they're really stressed.
This I think is been the challenge with subjective experience and like data, right? Like I think it's like just like the gentleman that I was on last night. He was positing that AI is going to make everyone dumber, and it might. I don't know. It totally might, but it's just that. Subjective experience is like extremely misleading, because, it's enough one or two, but also like we just don't know exactly what's going on for them and so on. So, yeah.
You should go do some measurements.
Yeah. But, it is interesting.
All right. Shall we, go to the hack of the week?
All right. Yeah. So let's talk about the hack of the week. I thought you had a pretty neat hack there. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in the spirit of prompt engineering, I was talking with some smart folks around this. And one of the easiest ways to get better results is that if you're looking for expert answers around a specific topic, like let's say we were going to talk about physics.
Yeah.
Right. And then you could say, you can ask it to answer in the spirit of someone like Richard Feynman. Mm-hmm. But then you can add on this little phrase that I love, which is, make your answers 2 standard deviations smarter. Mm. And so literally just asking them to be smarter, you will get better results. So I encourage you to try that.
That's a great tip. I actually, but like,
Don't try this with family members.
I guess that's one thing that in my company we think a lot about how to use AI for coaching and therapy and all these things, and people in some ways prefer that experience as opposed to talking to a human, because you could just like tell the AI like, hey, like be smarter about this, right? Like feeling awkward about it without feeling awkward about it. Similarly, you could just like, you don't feel as much as emotional burden as when you communicate with an AI. But it's a great hack. How cool.
Yeah. You're opening a whole other topic.
Yeah.
That is one of my fears about AI, is that people are going to feel more comfortable talking with an AI because they never get pissed.
That is true. That is very true. Yeah.
And versus like being with the suffering and the rejection because you ask your friend to answer 2 standard deviations smarter.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap this up. It was another fun episode of Almost Got It. Do you want more suffering or less suffering? Let us know in comments, and please subscribe and let us know what you like and didn't like. And we'll be back in about a week.
Awesome.